Hello my dear learner, I welcome you again to another session. This session will continue with our discussion on the planning function. In our previous lesson, we did introduce the planning function. We defined planning, we identified the steps involved in the planning process, and also the forms and types of plans. We'll continue with that discussion, and we'll start with looking at the approaches for planning. So, approaches for planning. There are basically two approaches to planning, or two main approaches that are employed in planning. And the first one is strategic planning, and the second one is management by objectives, abbreviated as MBO. The first approach to planning, which is strategic planning, is a major discussion under corporate strategy. And while formulating corporate strategies, the planning approach employed is the strategic planning approach. For that reason, because it is going to be taken care of under corporate strategy, we will herein just briefly define what strategic planning is as an approach to planning, so that our main discussion under the approaches will be on MBO, or management by objectives. So what is strategic planning? Strategic planning plainly means planning strategically. And when you're planning strategically, what are you doing? When you're planning strategically, you're trying to assess. You're trying to forecast, to envision the future, how it's likely going to be, how it's likely going to affect what you do as an organization. And with that clear understanding of the future, or the clear understanding of the future environment, then an organization is able to put together a concrete plan, a concrete action plan to enable it align its resources, enable it align its activities to that likely state in the future. So basically, we can define strategic planning as a systematic process of envisioning the desired future and translating this vision into broadly defined goals and objectives, and then putting in place the appropriate set of strategies to achieve the organization's vision by aligning the organization to its environment. So we're defining strategic planning, which is the first approach to planning, as the systematic process of envisioning the future, and then translating that vision, into a set of goals and objectives. And devising the appropriate strategies to align the organization to that future. to that future so as to achieve the organization vision. Breaking down that definition, when you're planning strategically, you're trying to assess the state of the environment as it is now and how it's likely going to change in the future. Discuss or consider the resources that the organization has at its disposal to do what it intends to do, and then defining what the organization can achieve using the resources at the disposal and operating within the state of the environment as it is and how it's likely going to be, and putting in place the right moves, the right actions to properly integrate and align the organization to the environment and assist it to achieve its goals and objectives. As I had mentioned, when formulating corporate strategies, the organization applies the strategic planning approach, and under that topic or component of the unit, then strategic planning would be a subject of further discussion. Our second planning approach is management by objectives, also known as MBO or management by results. So MBO, which we're describing as management by objectives or results. Now, it is important to note that this planning approach was popularized by a renowned writer in the subject of management, by Peter F. Drucker. What informed Peter Drucker's development of management by objectives? This was informed by the inadequacies of the traditional planning approach. And what was the nature of the traditional planning approach? The nature of the traditional planning approach was that managers would devise plans. And by devising plans, we mean they would set or establish organization goals and objectives and go ahead to formulate the means, the strategies or actions plans to be employed in order to achieve those goals and objectives. After having formulated such plans, the management would push them down the throats of their subordinates or employees to implement them. What that meant was that the people who are involved in executing or implementing plans did not play any role in the planning process. They were never involved. All they were required to do is execute the plans as developed by the management. That was effective. And it is that observation by Peter F. Drucker that led to his development of management by objectives as one of the planning approaches. So what exactly is MBO? MBO is a participative and collaborative planning approach, which requires that all employees at all levels of the organization to be actively involved in the planning process. That simply means it is an approach that requires employees to be involved in the goal-setting process, in the process of formulating the action plans or the strategies. In implementation of those plans and in evaluating their performance to the extent to which the plans they have devised and the objectives they have set are being achieved. So we're defining MBO as a participative and collaborative approach. To planning, which requires all employees at all organizational levels, to be actively involved in the planning process. What this means is that unlike the traditional planning approach, where employees were never involved in planning, but were only involved in execution of plans or implementation of plans, this approach brings on board, seeks the active participation of each and every employee in the organization, from the top to low levels in the planning process. What informs this kind of a planning approach? Peter Drucker identifies two main things which make it a preferable approach to planning. And the assumptions made by Peter Drucker as to why it is a preferred approach to planning are that people perform better when they know what is expected of them and when they can relate the individual goals to the organizational goals. By being required to set your own goals, formulate the action plans or the means you intend to achieve them, and execute them, measure performance, correct yourself, then employees are likely going to perform well and to be committed in pursuing the organization course. The second assumption is that employees are interested in participative management, which simply means that people are interested in the goal-setting process, or in short, people are interested in the planning process and they want to be involved in that process. So, what are the steps involved in MBO? The MBO process. MBO process or steps. The MBO process involves several successive set of steps, which includes establishing overall organization goals, establishing specific goals, formulation of action plans, fourth step is implementation and maintenance. Implementation and maintenance, followed by periodic review and final evaluation and review. So the 6 set of steps make the MBO process. What does each step entail? Basically, the first step, when we talk of overall organization goals, this is the main goal or basic goal of the organization. What the organization as a whole seeks to achieve in the future. So this first step requires that the top level management, not on their own, but in collaboration with other managers. Other managers mean mid-level and low-level managers work together to establish the basic goal of the overall organization. This deviates from the traditional way of planning, where only the top management would set the overall organization goal. Once the overall organization goal has been set, specific goals are established, specific to departments, specific to sections, specific to units, specific to individual employees. So here, this step entails setting the objectives of respective departments, sections, units, and individual employees. In here, an employee sets their own goals, what they want or intend to achieve. The third step in that process is formulation of action plans. In the same collaborative spirit that has been invoked while setting the first 2 sets of goals, the employees of the organization, the managers, work together to devise the means, the ways or methods that they intend to employ in order to achieve the goals they have set. So people in departments, so the managers of the departments together with their subordinates, they will set or they will formulate the strategies, the courses of action that they intend to employ in order to achieve the departmental goals. An individual employee, while working together with their manager or supervisor, will formulate or devise the means they intend to use or employ to achieve the individual goals set in the earlier step. Once action plans have been put in place, implementation and maintenance takes over. Implementation is now all employees, together with the managers, go ahead to actualize the action plans, the means that they determined to use in order to achieve their set goals and objectives. Note, usage of maintenance in these steps mean employees do this at their own initiative, at their own discretion, while exercising self-discipline, while checking on themselves. Are they disciplined enough to do what is expected of them without necessarily being policed around? Periodic review. As employees continue to implement their action plans, there is a need for a continuous review by both the employees and their managers to determine the extent to which the goals that they set for themselves are being achieved and the effectiveness of the plans or the action plans that they are employing to achieve such goals and objectives. In addition to determine the extent to which these goals are being achieved, this step of the process is also supposed to enable them identify any form of barriers or challenges that the employees may be facing and any inadequacies in their action plans in order to review them, to make them more effective. The last step in that process is final evaluation and review. This comes after the end of the planning period. Let's say the end of the year. So at the end of the year, the employees, together with their managers, by way of joint sessions, they will now evaluate. They will conduct a final review on the extent to which the goals that they had set for that period have been achieved or not. And any needed changes for the future period of time are also discussed here, and the plans for the next period are also put in place. So this basically forms the set of steps that make up the MBA or MBO process. What would be the merits of MBO?
Thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to get yourself a copy of our professionally prepared study text and revision partners. Visit our shop along Tom Boyer Street, Pioneer House, 3rd floor, opposite Fire Station.